wanted to label this. Hey. What's up, everybody? I don't know how to, what did I do? I'm trying to figure out how to, I wanted to pin it. How you do that? Hola, hola, hola. So I confirmed with John yesterday, so he should be on at 2. I'm just allowing you guys to come in. So I think you guys should take notes. Because John is very, very informative. He's been around for a while. If you guys don't know who John Meadows is, he's a pro bodybuilder. And he writes really good programs. I think I've done the X Factor. I think it was the one that, hey. I think it's X-Men. The one that does, I think it has bodybuilding and powerlifting. So, take notes because I think this is going to be a good one. Hola, hola. What's up? Oh, this hair, I need a haircut. Thank you. Look, my friend's calling me. You want to book a session? All right. Well, you just got to click on the book icon. And then it takes you to my schedule. I'm all booked for October, but November is open. There are some days in November that are still open. So you're more than welcome to schedule. Josh Lee _1. So I don't know if you guys know who John Meadows is, but he's kind of a big deal. So I'm excited. At least for me. Yeah, anybody who wants to schedule, you gotta go on the book icon where it says book and just click there, and then my schedule will open. It'll tell you what I have available. I do 1 hour and 2 hour sessions. The 1 hour is usually for 1 or 2 body parts. 2 hours is usually if you're gonna do full body or legs, or if you have multiple injuries that need attended to. I wish I could open something in Manhattan, in New York. It's expensive out there. I would love to, though. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, but Jersey's not too far. I have people who come from New York all the time. It's about 40 minutes where I'm at. So, if you want to come see me, come down. I'm in Jersey. Not too far. I get people from Philly, Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem. Some people from Manhattan. I should have like 1 million people on here. I wish. Okay. So you got, okay. Yeah. Continue seeing your chiropractor. I'm not anti-chiro. I'm not anti-anything. I don't bash other people's professions. He's supposed to be here at 2. John Meadows is supposed to be here at 2. So hopefully I confirmed with him last night, and he actually posted it on his story today. So I think it's a go. Last time he forgot. We forgive him. Yeah. I think this is weird looking. Ooh. Come on. I've been in the rehab field for 5 years. So I started off as a physical therapist assistant and personal training and all that other good stuff involving the body. I'm going to save the John Meadows and I'll post it. I'll make sure I do that. And then my own stuff for 2 years. This will be, I'm going on year 2 of having my own business and doing recovery work / rehab, prehab. He's here. Hi, John. You gotta request me. Request to come in. Hey.
Work?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. I can't complain.
Okay.
Let me get set up here. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. It's a little dark here.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just working away on a fun Monday.
Okay.
It's all good.
I appreciate you taking time out to do this IG live with me. So thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
So I don't know if you're familiar with what I do. So I do a lot of recovery work, stretching, cupping, scraping. I kind of incorporate a little bit of everything. So what I like to do is I like to talk to other professionals and just get their opinion on what recovery is for them. how it has changed throughout their years, because sometimes when you're younger, your recovery is different than when you're 20 years in or 30 years in. It's not going to look the same. And then just how you've changed as far as recovery wise. How do you look at it for your clients? First and foremost, I'm a fan. I've done three of your programs, and they're the Creeping Death, Annihilation, and I think it's the X-Men, the one that does powerlifting and bodybuilding.
Oh yeah, Program
Yeah,
X, yeah.
yes. So I've done that one because I did powerlifting for 2 years, and then I kind of stopped, and I was trying to look for something to transition into, and so then I picked that program so I can kind of still have my lifts going. And I think you were like one of the first athletes to kind of do that hybrid. At least I feel, in my opinion, that that power building, I think you were like one of the first ones to actually kind of incorporate powerlifting into your training, or at least from what I see. I know Ronnie Coleman has done some too, but I think you kind of put it on the map there for us.
Well, I mean, what I did was in the early 90s,
Yes.
I trained at Westside Barbell. So I always really believed in the kind of mix of bodybuilding and powerlifting if done intelligently. I certainly wasn't the first guy to do it, but I've always felt like it was a great combination. And if you manage it properly, it pays off for you.
Yeah. Did you feel like it made a difference in your physique as far as thickness and density and?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was in my early 20s, I was very leg dominant. I had these really big legs. I was squatting upwards of 800 pounds. I did 785.
Okay.
And I had a very small upper body, though. So I didn't have really any back, so to speak. I didn't have any lats. I didn't really have much of a chest. I really didn't have much of an upper body, period.
Okay.
And when I went to Westside Barbell, there was another bodybuilder there. His name was Mike Francois. Mike actually is from here in Columbus, where I'm at. Mike is unquestionably the best bodybuilder to ever come out of this area. He won the Arnold Classic. And Mike was having the same issues I was. He was pretty leg dominant. He was certainly way bigger than I was, but his back was kind of his lagging body part. Mm-hmm. So Mike went over there, we could see how much progress he was making. His back turned out to be a phenomenal body part, particularly his spinal erectors. He had spinal erectors that looked like they were like 6 inches thick. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. So I found my way over there as well, and I do feel like my upper body tremendously improved. I didn't do just the powerlifting they were doing. I still mixed in bodybuilding stuff at a different gym. So I would go over there, and I would do it was on the west side of Columbus, and I would do my powerlifting work. Then I would get in my car, and I would drive as fast as I could back to the east side where I lived, and then I would do my bodybuilding work. So I was actually doing both.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I loved it. I was in my 20s. I was recovering really well at the time. So, yeah, it was fun days. It was fun times, though.
Okay. Yeah. So you were working out, what, twice a day?
No. I would train, and then I would get in my car and drive straight to the other gym.
Oh, wow. So right after.
Right after.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. For example, like let's say we did our speed squats. So I would do my 8 sets, mm-hmm. And then we'd do some reverse hyper work. We were really big on reverse hypers, and then that was it. And I would get in my car and I'd drive to Worlds, and I would do my leg presses, my hack squats, my leg curls.
Okay.
So.
All right. So I just wanted to get your insight on how do you look at recovery? Like when you are programming, and just how has it changed for you from like in your earlier on in your career to now? How important is it?
So important. And there's so many things that go through my head when you say that. So from a training perspective, the way you sequence exercises is massively important. And Sean, who just joined. Hey, Sean, what's up?
Hey,
Sean could tell you the way we sequence exercises is the exercises that I feel are the most hard on connective tissue. I don't put them first. You'll never see me have Sean or anybody else go in the gym and bench press first. I won't do it. It's too too much risk versus reward. I think there's a way to sequence exercises to keep your body healthier. That's number one.
Okay.
And I don't really see people, even to this day, ever talk about it. But I've always felt like it was very important. I've always felt like it was critically important. You put enough time in, you put enough years in, and you just start to get aches and pains, and your body, it just kind of changes. I'm 48 now. I can't do the things that I could do when I was 24. So there's a way you train methodology there, the way you sequence exercises. Then you look at the training itself. I could handle a lot more volume and hard sets when I was younger compared to what I can handle now. So you've got to be very cognizant of just what you can handle. You know, just because some person A says, I need you to do 20 sets or 5 sets or whatever, it should be, I mean, the number of hard sets you do should be dictated on what you can recover from.
Okay.
So you go to these training variables, but then it's like, well, that's only part of the mix. There's so many other things, like your nutrition, for example. If you don't eat around training, you will find that you get very, very sore. Muscle protein breakdown is accelerated. You get a lot more of it. The whole ratio of muscle protein synthesis and breakdown skews to not in your favor. So there's a nutritional aspect, and this is why when I have people diet for contests, I always feed them very good before, during, and after workouts, and I take calories away from other parts of the day because I want them fueled, I want them to feel good, and I want them to recover. And then if people don't believe me, I would just tell them, okay, go train really hard and then don't eat for 5 hours. And then they were like, man, I got really sore when I did that. I told you, it has a big effect on recovery just because of insulin and all these other things. And then you have other things. You know, I used to get ART done back in the later 90s. I started having issues with my elbows, and I'd get, whether it be tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, I always had something going on. Something was always strained. And I had a lot of ART done, and for certain injuries, it was very beneficial. It was very beneficial. And then I had some injuries where it didn't quite help, so I had MAT done. Okay. And MAT had certain things, like, for example, my spine. I would have my spine get out of alignment, and I would have a leg length discrepancy. One leg would be shorter than the other, and a guy would work on my I had one guy working on my atlas and axis, you know, top vertebrae, and then I had another guy work at MAT on my longissimus and all these muscles down my spine. Next thing you know, my squat's up 75 pounds just from having that work done. So, and then once I hit 2004, I started having a deep tissue therapist girl work with me. I still work with her. It's 16 years later.
Wow.
So I'm a massive believer in the deep tissue work that's done. And you know, when I was getting ready for competitions, I'd go to her twice a week, but the rest of the year I'd go to her once a week. And I think that extended my career. So I've always been a big believer in all these other things. You know, people say, oh, deep tissue work doesn't really help, and oh, ART doesn't help. I believe it does. I just think that certain things work better for certain people in certain areas.
Yes, it depends on the injury and what.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, for instance, I had Piriformis Syndrome. And in 2002, that was probably one of the most painful issues I had. I couldn't even walk. I couldn't go up and down stairs. I was taking the elevator at work. And I had to get cortisone shots in my hips because I was training for nationals that year.
Oh, wow.
And I got MAT done and ART done, and neither one helped. So I had to get a different kind of treatment to help. And then, like I said, like when I had any rotator cuff issues, I could get ART done, my supraspinatus or whatever it was, and boom, it would heal. So it was just about finding the right treatment for what was wrong with me based on the injury.
Yes.
But if I worked hard enough, I always kind of could find eventually. I had enough smart people around me where we could eventually figure it out.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that because I do a little bit of everything, and I do that because I never know what you're going to need. It's not one, I don't like to specialize in one specific thing because that's not the end all be all for all injuries. So you have to, for me, I have to be open-minded and just find what's going to work for you. You know, sometimes it's a guessing game and I got to figure out, okay, if we're going to do this and you're not receiving, you haven't seen results within 1 or 2 sessions, then I have to try something else. But sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 different things in one session because, you know, I just feel that that's what they need. But I feel like the more options you have, the better it is. And like you said, it's not one thing is going to work all the time, especially depending the depth of the injury, how bad is it, if it's partial tear, full tear, nerve issue, like all those things. There's so many variables. You just can't just have one technique and think it's going to just work for everyone and everything, every body part. It's just different. And the individual is different. Some people they come in with really dense muscles, thick muscles. That session is going to be different than someone who has, just softer connective tissue, something that I can actually like dig in. There's so many variables, and people think it's so easy just to kind of like, okay, you specialize in this and then you're just going to do this on everyone. It's not going to work all the time, so you have to be open-minded and figure out, okay, I'll take a little bit of this, I'll take a little bit of that, and then we'll, figure out what works.
Yeah.
How are you with, because I watched the video and I know you were big on stretching, right? Just explain to people why you're big on stretching. Like, I know why you're big on stretching, but how that can help with muscle growth, how that can help your physique, and why some people should incorporate it in their training and as part of their recovery.
So back in 1990 to about 1992, I used to work out at a place called the Piriformis Center. And this was when I was in college. And there was a guy named John Perillo who was really big on fascial stretching. Now, he carried it out so that it was extremely painful. You would get a really good pump in your muscle groups, and then he would put you in a really painful stretch position for like 60 seconds. And it was extremely painful. And his theory was you could manipulate fascia tissue. Now, I don't know if you can manipulate fascia tissue or not. I don't know. I'm not that smart. Last I read when I was in school, which was decades ago, it had the tensile strength of steel. So I don't know.
Yes.
But
it's about 10,000 pounds of pressure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if you manipulate fascia tissue or not. I don't know. But what I did know was it seemed to work. And it seemed to really help with my recovery too. I tried through the years many, many different ways of stretching, but I always kept coming back to what worked for me, which was getting a lot of blood in the muscle, and then toward the end of the workout, then incorporating stretches in a couple different ways. So I would do the whole workout, and then I would just do regular stretching. Like let's say I'm training chest, and then the workout's over. Then I might have, toward the end of the workout, in between sets, once I got a lot of blood in there, I might maybe have somebody pull my arms back to stretch my chest, just something like that. But I also started to incorporate really training muscles at long muscle lengths. So in other words, like a fly for your chest, like a machine fly, you can train your pecs at a really long muscle length that way. Mm-hmm. Your hamstrings, like you could do a stiff-legged deadlift version where you can really train muscles along long muscle lengths. Mm-hmm. And I never really, this was 15 years ago, and I never really, and I'm not sure I understand all the details now, but I always felt like, man, this is working. There's something to this. And now I see all this research coming out that's saying, oh, you need to, train at these long muscle lengths periodically. And there's all kinds of theories on it. There's, for me, the range of motion always was a lot better too. So when I do all this stuff for instance, my shoulders, I have incredible flexibility in my shoulders. You would probably be really surprised to just see how mobile my shoulders are, the way I can work them. So there's so many benefits. So I felt like there's a recovery benefit. I felt like there's a joint health benefit. I feel like my joints feel better. And I feel like when you can train a muscle comfortably to a really long range of motion, I feel there's probably some benefits to hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. If you look at actually what builds muscle, there's different kinds of hypertrophy. There's muscle fibers can lay down in parallel and get thicker, but they can also lay down in series. Mm-hmm. And when they grow in series, that's usually accomplished by training at really long muscle lengths. So the muscles can grow right at the belly of the muscle, which is what most growth is. But muscles can actually get kind of this lengthier appearance to them. You're not changing your origin insertion. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that muscle fibers can lay down in series. And you can look it up. The information's out there. And so I thought, man, I could kind of contribute to a fuller muscle belly to the best your genetics will allow.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all kinds of things on Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindles and local mechanoreceptors. There's all kinds of stuff. Now I'm not smart enough to say this definitely causes muscle growth, but there's local IGF-1 is supposed to be stimulated. There's all kinds of this. But what I would say is by trial and error, I always felt like stretching and those long muscle lengths was very beneficial and really beneficial for athletes too, because I work with a lot of athletes, not just bodybuilders. So I'm a huge believer in flexibility.
Yes, and mobility.
Mobility, that's right.
I know you had, didn't you have something with your shoulder where you couldn't like flat bench for a while? Was that an issue?
I've had every issue you can have.
Because I remember watching a video and you're like, I only do incline bench because I can't have them flat benched in a while. So I want to educate. So I just wanted you to educate people like you can work around injuries and there's other ways of growing stuff instead of just like eliminating an exercise and then creating atrophy at a muscle group without, you can work it from different angles using different exercises in different muscle groups. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've basically been doing that the last 20 years.
See?
I'm 48 now, and I still train pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
I got a check-in from a guy today, for example, and he said, my lower back is starting to get a little tender. It's starting to get beat up. And I said, stop your barbell squats, replace it with X. Stop your bent over rows, replace it with chest supported rows. So I took 4 exercises that I thought he probably doesn't need, and I replaced with 4 other exercises. It's no big deal. People are so married to certain exercises. Oh, well, I just got to work through the pain. Well, there's a difference between good pain and bad pain. Yeah. When I had shoulder issues, this was probably 3 years ago when I had shoulder issues. I only trained at a certain range of motion and only on certain exercises, and it healed. If I would have just been stubborn and said, "Oh, I'm just going to keep doing this exercise, no matter how bad it hurts," then I'd probably would have had rotator cuff surgery right now or some kind of injury. So I don't understand why people's egos are so big that they can't just pick another exercise that doesn't hurt. Like for a muscle to grow, the fiber needs to be activated, it needs to be loaded, it needs to be exhausted. Like you can do that with multiple exercises. They're not just one magical exercise. To this day, my favorite exercise will always be squats. I love squats. Mm-hmm. But in about 2013, I started having really bad issues with my back when I squatted heavy. And I mean, I wasn't at my peak strength, but I was still doing 500 for a set of 8 to 10 back then. And my back started hurting really bad. Like I could squat, but then the next 2 days, I would hurt really bad. And then I said, you know what? As much as I love squats, I just can't do them heavy anymore. And I actually just quit doing them altogether, and I started focusing on other exercises, and my legs actually got bigger. This is when I was 41 years old. My legs went from 30 to 31 inches. They got even bigger. And I try to tell people, like, other exercises do work. I mean, you just got to find another exercise that feels great, and you just got to work it hard.
Yeah. See, I love that because a lot of the times people will come into me and they'll have like shoulder pain or back pain, and they'll be like, well, I just stopped doing shoulder exercises. I'm like, why? There's so many shoulder exercises that you can do that don't hurt. You just don't have to stop doing them at all because you feel like you're going to hurt something. So I love that you actually do that. Like you incorporate and you eliminate one thing, but replace it with something else that's effective and not going to put any strain on the injury or the joint itself.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest keys to extending a career too.
Yeah.
I try to teach that to the guys I'm working with. Like if you just want to be in the sport for a couple of years, go ahead and go crazy. But if you want to be around for a while, you're going to have to get a little bit wiser with your training.
Yeah. I know you mentioned too one time, another video that I watched that like back in the day, it was everyone always had this mentality. Like if you didn't wake up the next morning crippled where you couldn't sit on the toilet, like you didn't have like a good workout. So how's that changed from then to now? So if someone comes to you and they say, John, like I just was so sore after the workout, I couldn't even I could barely walk the next day. Like how would you approach that situation?
Well, that's an interesting question because it kind of ties back to our initial discussion on recovery. And up until I was 39 to 40 years old, honestly, that's what I thought. I thought the more sore you were, then hey, that just means the workout was even better. So the more sore, the better the workout. That's what I thought. I literally thought that. And I probably went through 20 years where my whole body was sore for 20 years straight. Then I started changing specifically the intra-workout nutrition, started changing how I fed my body during training and before and after training. And, I continued to work on my deep tissue stuff, but I got to the point where I wasn't sore anymore. And I really went for a period of probably 2 years to 3 years where I actually didn't get sore one time. And I continued to progress. That's when I got my pro card, actually. I made great improvements. I was competing at like 210 or 212. Then once I really kind of mastered the recovery stuff for me, then my competition weight was like 220 or 221. Now remember, I'm like 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So that kind of improvement was really drastic. And I credit that to recovery and being able to recover. And now I hate being sore. Like, I don't want to be sore now because I know it's not necessary. If you're a little sore, like, I'm not going to tell you that's a bad thing. It's okay. But if you're crippled sore, it's just not necessary. Yeah. I mean, it's just necessary is what I would say. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't train real hard and you don't get sore, then, okay, I'm not going to tell you that's good either because you should still push yourself. But if you push yourself really hard and you don't get sore, you can still grow. Like, there's no limiting. I mean, there's no need there's nothing that says you have to be sore. Sure. So I've changed a lot in my perspective there. And the only thing that changed my mind was I just had to see it for myself. You know how we get so stubborn in our beliefs? And I just had to experience it. And then what was cool was when I started having my clients do some of the same protocols and they saw the same thing. I thought, man, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe I'm really onto something. Then you find some research here and there, and you see how certain types of intra-workout nutrition suppress 3-methylhistidine. That's a muscle protein breakdown marker in your urine, so you can see that muscle fibers aren't getting broken down as bad, and muscle protein synthesis is up. So you start seeing all these things, you're like, man, I was wrong about this for like literally 25 years. I was wrong, But you always got to keep an open mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I love you, because you keep an open mind. I know you work with a doctor, right, as far as like nutrition and your supplements. I want you to educate people too, like what supplements do you recommend as far as recovery, how important nutrition is, because I know that's a huge factor for you. And I know you have a great supplement line as well, because you do the intra workout. So just educate people so they have a better understanding, like that these things are essential and they do help you recover. Because a lot of times people, especially people who are watching that follow me, they feel like tissue work is great. I do tissue work, but that's only a piece of it. You have to be hydrated. You have to eat. You have to do your own little prehab exercises in the gym to prevent you from getting injured. So just educate people on your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, the part that I'm super passionate about is the intra workout. So what you consume during a workout. And, I've been sponsored by many, many companies over the years, and I've always had access to free product. And I've got up to where I was taking 30 grams of BCAAs a workout. I've done everything imaginable during training to try to eliminate soreness. And then in 2011 is when I started experimenting with, at the time it was a broken down casein. It was casein hydrolysate, but after that I switched to essential amino acid. So everybody was always on the big BCAA train, which is not a bad thing, but BCAAs are only part of the essential amino acid spectrum. It's only 3 of the 9. So I always thought, why don't you just use all the essential aminos so you have like literally all the substance you need, all the substrate that you actually need to build muscle. So I do take credit. I was one of the first guys that talked about EAAs way back then, 8-9 years ago. Now everybody does, but there was only one company that even sold an EAA. Maybe there was 2. Beverly International had the tablets, and then there was another company that had this product called Purple Wrap, and it was an essential amino product. So I started playing around with the essential aminos, and then I found a carbohydrate that I thought paired with it really well. It's called cluster dextrin, highly branched cyclic dextrin. I did the research on it. I saw how you didn't really get a big insulin spike from it, which I liked, because if you remember, everybody's always saying, spike your insulin, spike your insulin. And I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like for my pancreas to dump a bunch of insulin and
Yes.
for my blood sugar to do this. Like, I don't like that.
It
I'd rather have
shouldn't
a
be. It should
steady,
be like this, a straight line. Yeah.
a straight line. So I really liked it. And then I started seeing, like, I started learning a little bit about how that steady insulin level affects cortisol, how cortisol impacts muscle protein breakdown. And then I began to experiment with every other carb source you can imagine. I did fractionated pea starches, everything you can imagine I have access to. I could not find anything that worked as good as electrolytes, essential aminos, and cluster dextrin.
Okay.
So that was the key for me, supplement-wise. Like, then I didn't get sore. So we used to have these challenges. Me and my buddies would kill each other trying to make each other sore. But as long as I took that stuff, I would always repair really well. Now, you could easily argue with me and say, well, you know, the pre-workout meal, you still have essential aminos in your blood. You still have glucose and glycogen in your muscles. You're right. But I just cannot simulate the recovery with food. I don't care how much food I ate, when I ate, what I ate, steak, fish, protein powder, before, after, it didn't matter. I could not recover like I could when I just drank the combination I talked about during training.
Do you think it just
And
because you think it's just because your body's processing it faster, and when you're eating the food, you have to digest it and it has to break down and like.
well, I mean, you're right. I mean, when you're eating the food, the digestion and assimilation isn't real quick. But when you have something like an essential amino acid or cluster dextrin, it essentially doesn't require digestion. And the nice
Yes.
thing is if you look at what's going on in the muscle cell, you have glucose transporters, GLUT4, that go to the surface of the cell membrane, and they attach to insulin receptors. They basically unlock a trap door, and they let glucose and creatine and amino acids, all that stuff, it can go into your muscle. And I mean, just from training, the mechanical stress of training accelerates that process, but also carbs. And when your body secretes a little bit of insulin, insulin is in your blood, and insulin attaches those insulin receptors, and that's how you shuttle nutrients into your muscle cells. So, you know, when you train, it's preferential to going into your muscle cells. The other times of the day, maybe some goes in your fat cells, maybe some goes in your muscle cells. But my point is you like to have this optimal process going while you train to shuttle nutrients into your muscle, which to me has that huge effect on recovery.
Yeah. So you're just taking advantage of that open window there that
I
allows.
think that people love to laugh and giggle and make fun of nutrient timing, but I think that's their loss. I think that your body's in a state to really absorb nutrients, and a lot of good things are happening. And I think people are just foolish to not, you know, I understand that protein synthesis is ramped up for 48 hours. Like, I understand all that. But when you train really hard, not if you're goofing off, but if you train really hard, you've got a window during training and around training where you can really shove a lot of nutrients that do a lot of good things for you and your muscle cells.
That's interesting. Because, yeah, I think people do look down on, you know, or don't take advantage of that window enough. You know, they kind of think it's like a fluke thing. But there is a lot of potential for opportunity for recovery and muscle growth. Why would you not want to take advantage of that? If your optimal goal is to gain muscle or be stronger, you want to have every advantage that you can possible. So like you said, it's shame on them for not wanting to take advantage of something that's so easy, you know, and there while it's open. I mean, it's not hard. It's not something hard to do. It's just a matter
Well,
of.
and the research is actually out there if you look for it. I think people just decide to not look for it because then they couldn't say what they want to say. But the
Exactly.
research is actually out there.
Well, because people are going to be biased and they're just going to look at the research that says something else and not what they want, what they want to see.
Yeah. So.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about? So you work with the tissue, with somebody who does deep tissue, right? What else do you have to say as far as like recovery? Is there anything that you want to just touch on that we haven't touched on?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. So, I mean, obviously sleep's really important. When I travel and do seminars, I have a whole module just on sleep and the different REM stages. And I mean, that's obviously critical too. But the other thing I would say that I think really hurts people is just stress in their life. And, I can't tell people how to relieve stress, but I would say that I think we're in this kind of society right now where we're all really stressed out for various reasons. And I think stress hormones can impact recovery in a bad way.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people, like, you got to figure out ways to handle stress, and you got to stop making big deals out of things that aren't necessarily big deals. You got to kind of pick your battles. You got to be appreciative of all the good things. My kids were, their team won the football championship this weekend that I coach.
Yeah.
You better believe I'm going to be happy for probably a year straight until next season.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I mean, we put a lot of work into it, but my point is there's so many good things out there, but all we do is focus on arguing with each other and being negative. And, my YouTube channel, like, for instance, I try to always keep it positive. I know I could get more viewers if I just start attacking people and being controversial, but that's just not who I am, and that's not how I want to build my business. So I mean, I'm human. I get frustrated like other people, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you're always thinking negatively and this is bad and that's bad, then it's hard to have a happy life, And so every seminar I do too, I spend a lot of time just talking to people about. There's these quadrants of emotion that people get in. They get in these. So I'll finish with this because I actually really love talking about this.
Okay, good.
There's these four quadrants of energy that people are usually in. There's one that I call kind of the high energy positive. So that's when you're all fired up, you're all happy, everything's rocking. And then there's this kind of low energy positive, and that's a good thing too. You're just kind of content. Hey, everything's going great, I'm happy. And then kind of you have the opposite on the flip side. You have this high energy negative emotional state where you're just angry and you're combative and you want to fight with people and you're aggressive. And then there's this low energy negative component. That's when you're kind of depressed, you're melancholy, you don't feel good, you think, oh, the world's out to get me, what use is there? And we all go through those ranges of emotions. We all do. Mm-hmm. But I try to teach people, when you get into the high energy or low energy negative states, like, you got to be self-aware. You got to know that you're in those states. And then once you're in that state, you got to try to understand, how am I going to get out of that and into the positive side? So, for example, if you're in kind of this low energy negative state, that melancholy state, chances are whatever you really enjoy in life, whether it be spending time with your family or whatever, you're probably not doing it a whole lot. Because if you were spending time doing things that you really love, you probably wouldn't feel that way. Mm-hmm. So one of the solutions for somebody in that state might be to understand, what is it that I'm happy doing, and am I really doing it? And then if you start to work those things in your life, you can see those people pull themselves out of those states. Or if somebody's really, really angry about something, try to understand, why are you angry? If you're mad at somebody, maybe the solution is just to talk to them. And doesn't necessarily mean you want to be friends. Just get it out and move on. Or maybe you just need to understand it's not really that big of a deal. But my point is to have the self-awareness to know where you're at, which mental state you're in, and try to get a game plan on how to get into the positive mental state, because that's really where you want to be. It's normal in life to hit those negative things, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't want to stay in those states. Mm-hmm. Like, if somebody does something wrong to you, I think it's okay to get upset, but you don't want to stay like that forever, right? Eventually, you got to let it go. You got to move on. You got to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important too, just in today's society, is just to try to be self-aware where you're at mentally. And because if you're always angry and stressed out, I think it has a huge impact on recovery. I really do. I think that it has a bad level in stress hormones and excess cortisol, brain chemistry. I mean, you name it.
Well, there's research on that, and the physiology behind it is stress is stress. So your body doesn't know if it's an external or an internal. It's going to respond the same way. So There's a lot of research on that, and I try to educate people on that too. And just some of the courses that I have taken as far as tissue work and working with people with injuries, sometimes their brain will latch on to a perception of pain because they are going through stress. It's like a global stressor. So it'll create that's that person that comes in there, oh, it hurts here. I don't know. It's like all up and down my arm. They don't have a specific area. It's not like, oh, right here it hurts. It's just like, oh, my whole arm. That's a global stressor. And that's usually coming from something mental, something outside that's creating this global stress in your body. So yeah, you're right. Like people need to be aware of that. And if you can calm down the nervous system, which is why some people get tissue work or they get, stretched out or they do other things, then you can have a better handle on that because your nervous system is here all the time and it's running high. You got to bring it down in order, to recover. So that's a huge one. Yeah, you're on point with that. There's a lot of people who deal with that and they don't understand. They don't, like you said, they're not aware of why it's happening. They're just stuck in this I guess like on the wheel, and they don't know, they don't see what's going on, that this stressor is coming from something emotional or mental. You got to learn how to let it go because it could affect other aspects of your training, your digestive system, ulcers. There's so many things that can happen with stress that people don't correlate the two. Yeah. But I love that you touch on that because there aren't a lot of people who do that. And then even with training, it can have an effect on your training. I know that some of the courses that I have taken, like when you're working with someone, you notice that they're at a plateau or their lifts are starting to decline. You got to ask, and everything else is the same. At some point, you have to ask them what's going on in your personal life because now it's affecting your performance.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so some people don't see that, and you have to bring that to their attention and like, okay, well, maybe you have to find different ways of dealing with it. Meditating. I don't know if you're big on meditating, but meditating, those are things that you can do to actually relax, reduce, cortisol levels, bring down your nervous system. But I think that's awesome. I wasn't aware of that, but I love that you love to talk about that because there aren't a lot of people who touch on that. Everybody's like the rah, and you got to be on 10. I'll share something with you, and I was actually sharing it with my friend. Even just taking that energy and putting it towards something else, even if you're angry. So I did powerlifting for 2 years, and I just posted a video because now I don't do it anymore, and I'm frail, but I'm tiny now. But I look at those videos, and I'm like, that girl in those videos was so angry. Like I had a lot of anger, and I just would take it out on the bar. So that's where I would put my energy, and that's what was my motivation. And then at some point, I just stopped being angry, so I just didn't want to lift heavy anymore because I didn't have that, where I just wanted to just take it out on someone. And I was like, there are people who don't talk about that a lot because I know, people stay in powerlifting, they stay in the sport for a while. But for me, I think it was more of an emotional thing. Like at that time, there were a lot of things that personally I was going through, and I was really angry. Like if you see the videos, it was like a totally different person. And I'm like, I was so mad at that time, but I just knew how to put my energy into something else. You know what I mean? And then it served and it served its purpose because, after 2 years, and I just remember like one day I think I was doing good mornings with the safety bar, and I just was like, what am I doing? Like I wasn't just mad anymore. I couldn't like muster up the emotion to like get underneath the bar. But so people can take it and use it into, take that energy, that negative energy, whatever it is that you're upset, and put it into something else, and turn it into a positive.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a great outlet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't think about that. And I remember I had a friend of mine, because I think it had happened to someone else, and he kind of started backing away from lifting heavy. And he's like, well, sometimes people they get into this sport for emotional purposes because there's just a lot of things going on, and they're angry. They want to have an outlet to release stuff. And then once they're content in their life, it's just like they don't want to do it anymore. Like it's just, you know, and that's kind of what I didn't realize at the time. I'm like, oh, that was me. I was that person too at the time. I was like, oh, whatever. But then when I got to a point where I was content with everything that was going on, I found my purpose, healing and working on people. Then I kind of just was like, oh, I don't really need to do that. I'm not that angry. I just realized I couldn't muster up the anger and the emotion that's what was actually driving me to do that sport. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand. I get it.
But I want to thank you. Is there anything else you want to touch on? I think that was awesome.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I hope I didn't bore everybody to death. So
No,
thanks for having me on.
No, I told everybody to bring out their notebooks and take notes because you were going to drop some mental jewels on us.
Well, hopefully you got at least one thing from me. So.
I got a lot of things. I got more than one thing. And I'm sure everybody else did. I love you. I hope I get to meet you in person. I know you were in Jersey one time and I missed you. But if you ever come out,
I'll be back once things calm down. I'd really love to get back on my gym tour. I'm just like right now, traveling's not up there on my priorities with how everything is. But I'll definitely be back. So I gotta visit Sean. Yes. I gotta visit Sean and make sure he's staying out of trouble too. So
Sean's a good dude. Well, if you're ever in Jersey, you're more than welcome to come on my table. Like, I would love to have you here. You need any work, I got you.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.